You are in the supermarket, third aisle from the back. You reach for the 12-pack without looking, drop it in the trolley, and keep walking. $8. You have never compared brands, never read the packaging, and you will not think about it again until the roll in the holder runs out. For all but the last 170 years of human history, nobody bought that. People did not go without. They had something in hand, chosen rather than grabbed, and archaeologists have found it. Some of it still carries the evidence of what it was used for. So what were people reaching for? Start with something that is not human at all. In the Budongo forest in Uganda, researchers led by Freymann and Hobaiter spent months watching two communities of wild chimpanzees. In 2025, they published what they saw. Chimpanzees pick leaves and wipe themselves after they defecate. They do the same after mating, and they will clean another chimpanzee's wound. This is not a one-off. Leaf use of this kind has been recorded at Budongo and at Ngogo across roughly 30 years of observation. No human taught them. There are no tools provided, no training, no research station handing out equipment. The behavior is there in the closest living relatives you have, in a forest where nothing has ever been sold in a 12-pack. Here is the part that gets the story backwards. Wiping is not a human invention. Humans did not work it out, and there was no moment when somebody first thought of it. The act is shared with animals that split from your ancestors long before anything recognizably human existed. What humans invented was the tool. That is the whole history in one line. Not the discovery of cleaning, but a long argument about what to clean with, conducted in stone, pottery, wood, moss, and eventually paper. The argument has been running for well over 2,000 years, and the losing entries are the interesting part. In the fill of Greek and Roman latrines, excavators keep finding small discs of broken pottery. They run from about 1 inch to 4 inches across, and from 1/5 of an inch to 4/5 of an inch thick. The edges have been chipped and smoothed down. They are called pessoi. What they were for is disputed. They have been read as game pieces, counting tokens and stoppers. And the paper that argues for wiping appeared in a journal issue that runs deliberately light material. That paper is worth taking seriously anyway. In 2012, Philippe Charlier and colleagues set out the case. A Greek drinking cup in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston shows a man crouching with one in his hand. A Greek proverb held that 3 stones were enough. Some of the surviving discs are cut from pottery bearing the names of specific people, which would make wiping with an enemy's name a recognized insult. Charlier's group also had something to say about the material. The recutting, they argue, was done to smooth the angles and reduce the injury a fired clay edge would otherwise do. Somebody sat down and took the corners off first. At Xuankwanji, a relay station on the Silk Road, archaeologists excavated a latrine and found wooden sticks with cloth wrapped around one end. Some of them still carried dried feces. In 2016, Huiyuan Ye and Piers Mitchell at Cambridge analyzed what was on them. They found eggs from 4 parasites, including roundworm, whipworm, and Chinese liver fluke. That last one matters. The liver fluke cannot complete its life cycle in the dry country around Dunhuang. Its nearest suitable habitat is nearly 1,000 miles away. Somebody carried that infection along the Silk Road and used the latrine at the relay station, which makes these sticks the earliest evidence anyone has found of infectious disease traveling the Silk Road. The sticks had been sitting in storage for around 20 years before anyone thought to scrape them. 2,000 years on, the evidence was still attached. The scholar Yan Jitui wrote the earliest surviving reference to paper being used for this purpose. His point was not that paper worked well. His point was that he would not use paper carrying the words of the sages or the names of the wise for the latrine, which tells you plainly what was happening to the rest of the paper. Read that in order. Paper reaches the latrine early enough in its history that a scholar has to write down which paper is off-limits. The technology did not arrive and then find this use. The use was waiting. The source is Joseph Needham and Xian Tsuen Suin's Survey of Chinese Paper and Printing, which is where nearly every retelling of this eventually leads. Excavations at Coppergate in Viking-age York pulled moss out of the pit fills, sometimes in very high concentrations. Alan Hall and Harry Kenward, who catalogued the plant and insect remains, concluded it had been brought into the town deliberately for wiping. They considered cloth and rejected it. Textile fragments do turn up in York, but not at anything like the volume the moss appears in, and not in the deposits where it would be expected if scraps had been used and thrown away. The moss is there in quantity, it is not local rubbish, and somebody was carrying it indoors. By 1393, the Chinese court had industrialized it. The Bureau of Imperial Supplies recorded producing 720,000 sheets a year for the palace at Nanjing, each about 2 feet by 3 feet. The emperor's own family received a separate run of 15,000 perfumed sheets, 3 inches square. The rest of the world took another 4.5 centuries. On the 9th of December 1857, a New York man named Joseph Gaiety put the first commercially packaged product on sale. Manila hemp, treated with aloe, sold as a medical remedy rather than a convenience, 500 sheets for 50 cents. Every single sheet carried his own name as a watermark. It did not take. Americans were using old newspaper and whatever else the house produced, and the histories of the period record the same objection every time. Why pay for something you have been getting free? Gaiety kept advertising it as a medical product. He was, on the evidence of the Athenian pottery, not entirely wrong. Look at what the evidence actually shows across those beats: pottery in Athens, wrapped sticks in the Gobi, moss in York, paper in Nanjing before it was paper anywhere else. These are separate places, working with different materials, arriving at solutions that have almost nothing in common except the shape of the problem. No line of descent connects them, as far as anyone has traced. Nothing suggests Coppergate inherited the idea from Athens or from Han China. What did travel, in the one case that can be traced, was a parasite. The tool is local. The act is not. Every one of those societies was solving the same problem because they had all inherited the same body and the same reflex that a chimpanzee in Uganda still acts on with a leaf. Which brings you back to the third aisle from the back. The 12-pack in your trolley is the current answer to a very old question, and it is a recent one. Joseph Gaiety died before most people were willing to buy it. Your great-great-grandparents were probably using something else. What is not recent is you reaching for it. That part is older than farming, older than writing, older than the species. It is the one item in the trolley that your ancestors were already dealing with before they were ancestors. And the only thing that has changed is what your hand closes around, which, in about 200 years, somebody will probably find strange. Every study, every site, and every researcher behind this episode is linked in the description.